Number 6. The Blood Moon. The Blood Moon in Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is a phenomenon that happens at random times during the night, although it is said that the cutscene will play when the player has reached nearly 3 hours of playtime. Essentially, this happens when the console is using 90% or more of its system memory, and the data stored within the game's long-term memory is reset. This causes it to restore enemies and respawn bosses, weapons to the world of Breath of the Wild to ensure that Link can still find resources such as food as the game goes on. When first encountered, the player will see ashes levitating in the air, the clouds will begin to fly by rapidly, the sky will turn a glowing shade of red, and an unsettling music will be heard, which is typically something that is dreaded by players, so much that they will go to extreme lengths to manipulate the game in order to avoid it. The Blood Moon is something that has never been used in past Zelda games, so it only makes sense that players who are minding their own business playing the game peacefully would eventually be terrified by it, not knowing what is going on and why this is even happening, leaving them in fight or flight mode. Number 5. Dead Hand. Buried deep under Kakariko Village is a secret that the Hyrule family has kept from the villagers for a long time. Not only does it hide the Shadow Temple, a historical place used by the Sheikah tribe to interrogate and imprison enemies of the royal family, but it is also home to the Bottom of the Well, which is an underground torture chamber that Link has to go through to retrieve the Lens of Truth. This is optional, but it will facilitate his visit to the Shadow Temple, Haunted Wasteland, Spirit Temple, and Ganon's Castle later on in the game. The Bottom of the Well is filled with scary enemies such as Redeads, Skulltulas, and even Wallmasters. It has 3 floors that Link has to explore, and towards the end of the dungeon, we encounter a horrifying abomination known as Dead Hand. When you first enter the battle, it burrows into the ground, leaving only multiple severed arms sprouting from it, waiting for you. Link has to deliberately let himself get caught by the hands at first, which will reveal the monstrosity that is Dead Hand, a white, humanoid creature that doesn't look like any other enemies encountered in the game. It has blotches of blood all over its deformed body, and a large, gaping, and unhinged jaw that tries to bite off Link's head if he gets too close. Adult Link also encounters one last Dead Hand in the Shadow Temple, and we cannot express our relief that there's only 2 of them in the entire series, even if some argue that 2 is already too many. Number 4. Big Sister. Everybody knows how the Big Daddies in the original BioShock were a pain to fight, and they are back in BioShock 2. However, they're also joined by a new enemy called the Big Sisters. Essentially, Big Sisters are mutated little sisters that simply couldn't handle the physical and mental conditioning forced on them in Rapture. Just like their counterparts, they protect the little sisters at all costs. What makes them a threat, however, is how agile, fast, and big they are. Standing at 6'10", they have suits reminiscent of the Big Daddies. They are seen observing the player and punishing him if he interferes with the little sisters. Confrontations with the Big Sisters are typically difficult. Once the player activates the Wrath of the Big Sister, there's a small delay before she arrives. This time can be used to prepare for battle, but the initial dread and suspense of waiting for them is what makes the Big Sisters absolutely terrifying. When she is near, the player will hear an ear-splitting screech, so they will have about 30 seconds to brace themselves for her arrival. The Big Sister will scream about 3 times before showing themselves and confronting you. It's pointless to hide, however, because until she is defeated, the Big Sister will never stop hunting you and will always catch up with you no matter how fast you run. Number 3. World of Nothing. After the pulsing black hole expands and consumes Sammer's kingdom, at the end of Super Paper Mario, we are transported back to Flipside. When entering the dimensional door to retrieve the Pure Heart, we stare in absolute shock as we realize that literally the entire level has been taken away. The joyful music, the scenery, the enemies, all gone. In its place, we can observe a void of nothingness, a blank canvas that reminds us that everything has simply ceased to exist. As if this level wasn't bad enough, it's accompanied by a very unsettling music, if we can even call it that, with a heart rate monitor sound that can be heard in the background, making an illusion that the world is on its last moments and nearing the end. It truly makes you realize just how much power Exiio has and how he'll stop at nothing to destroy the universe. This moment is one of the most memorable moments from the Paper Mario series, and this is why it deserves a spot at number 3. Number 2, Boys of Silence. The BioShock series has its fair share of creepy moments, but something incredibly anxiety-inducing is found towards the end of BioShock Infinite when you reach Comstock's house. The Boys of Silence are brainwashed men who now act as servants and watchmen for Comstock. Thankfully, or so we think, the Boys of Silence do not engage in combat. Their primary goal is to watch over the facility and act as stationary sentries. Booker's main goal is to get through the house without being seen by them. And while harmless, the Boys of Silence are quite intimidating, and it can be stressful to try and sneak around them. Should the player enter a Boy of Silence direct line of sight, it will stand still and detect you. If Booker doesn't evade them immediately, the enemy will let out a piercing scream, sounding an alarm and summoning the lunatics of the facility so they can fight Booker. While they're only encountered at the Comstock house, they're unkillable, unavoidable, and react to noise as well. And players who have played through the entire game also know that there's a certain event and jump scare that will leave you with a lasting memory of these guys. Number 1, Dr. Bumby. While the executioner might be more on the stressful side rather than disturbing, we have something here that might make you squirm with discomfort. Dr. Bumby, who is a psychiatrist introduced in the beginning of the game, has accepted to take Alice as a patient. And throughout the game, as we collect memories, we understand that he tries to make Alice forget about the traumatic events by using hypnotherapy. However, in the final chapter, we learn that he may have had a greater role in Alice's past than she first realized, and that Dr. Bumby is not the respected doctor everybody thinks he is. Obsessed with Alice's younger sister Lizzie, he broke into the Littles' household one night, went into Lizzie's room, locking the door behind him, and assaulting her sexually, proceeding with murdering her and setting the house on fire. Alice sees him holding her sister's bedroom key in the forest and falls into insanity as she loses her entire family to the fire. The deeper Alice goes into Wonderland, the more she starts to realize that Dr. Bumby was to blame for her family's demise, and that he was manipulating her all along into thinking that she had not seen him that night. Throughout the dollhouse chapter, we are met with the insane kids and a lot of doll-like statues who appear to be stripped of their innocence, which is a foreshadowing of Dr. Bumby's true colors. When we reach the end, we finally get to meet the doll maker, Bumby's real identity. We learn that his life purpose is actually quite twisted, as he views the vulnerable children at the orphanage as easily manipulated objects to be sold to pedophiles and to be exploited after taking away their memories. Alice is then confronted with Dollmaker's true and gruesome form, and filled with rage, she challenges him into one last battle. In real life, Alice is seen with Dr. Bumby at the Moorgate train station and pushes him in front of an incoming train, killing him instantly and avenging her family, restoring peace to Wonderland, as well as putting an end to his inhumane crimes, destroying him once and for all. What seems to be an eerie, twisted version of Alice in Wonderland at first glance turns out to be a lot more than that. The lore and the plot twists in the story are deeply disturbing and definitely something we had not seen coming, which is why Dr. Bumby earns its place at our number 1 spot. And there it is. This was my top 13 most unsettling things in video games. It was pretty hard to choose just because I've played so many games in my life that it was kind of hard to just narrow it down to 13 of them. So I might do more videos like this in the future, including like some of the honorable mentions. But yeah, let me know if you like this list. If you want me to make more videos like this, please tell me as well. I hope that you're having the spookiest day or night in the best way possible. And I will see you in my next video. Bye guys!